Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something that touches almost every single one of us, probably multiple times a day: social media.
Yeah. It's really become so deeply woven into, the fabric of our lives, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Feels like in just, what, a decade or so,
Right.
platforms like X, Instagram, TikTok, and they're just,
Well,
they're everywhere.
exactly. And we've got this really interesting article in front of us today. It zeroes in on the connection between that constant presence, our productivity, and maybe most importantly, our ability to focus.
Right. It lays out 15 key insights
15 points, yeah.
on something that seems so simple, just scrolling. But our mission with this deep dive is to really unpack what those insights are telling us. Like, how are these platforms actually interacting with our brains? What habits are they creating day to day?
And crucially, what can we actually do about it, to maybe regain a bit more control?
That's the core question, isn't it? The article starts right off by acknowledging the huge transformation, how we connect, get info.
Even how some of us work now. It's massive.
And it poses that critical question, especially when, let's be honest, for so many of us, checking social media is the first thing we do in the morning.
Yep. Guilty as charged sometimes.
It asks, what are we trading for that quick scroll? Seems harmless, right? But maybe the cost is, well, higher than we think.
The article definitely suggests the costs are significant. And understanding this productivity impact, it's not just about work deadlines.
No, it's personal too.
It's about working smarter, hitting your goals, and frankly, not ending up completely burned out.
Yeah.
The research it mentions points to real consequences of being constantly distracted. Missed deadlines, sure, but also stress levels just going through the roof.
And the actual quality of what you produce suffers too.
Right. So, okay, let's dig into the science a bit then. Why is it so hard to resist that pull? What's actually happening upstairs when, the notification pings?
That's what I want to know.
Well, the brain science here is pretty eye-opening. One big point the article drives home is that when you get interrupted, even by something tiny, like that ping, it can take over 20 minutes to fully get your concentration back on whatever you were doing before.
20 minutes, seriously. After just one little notification, that's kind of depressing.
Tell me about it.
My brain must spend half the day just trying to get back on track.
Right, and it becomes this cycle. You get a notification, maybe a like or a comment.
Feel this good for a second.
Exactly. That triggers a little hit of dopamine. It's a reward signal in your brain.
Okay.
Then there's this thing researchers call attention residue, which means even after you've quickly checked your phone and switched back to your work,
You're still thinking about it.
sort of, part of your cognitive capacity, your brain power, is still lingering on what you just saw, or that little interaction.
Okay. And that's where the brain starts adapting. Like neuroplasticity, it learns to expect those little hits, those distractions.
Precisely. You're basically training your brain to crave that constant novel stimulation. The more you give in to those quick checks, the more you strengthen the pathways in your brain that make you want to do it again and again.
Now, the article is fair. It calls social media a double-edged sword. It's not just painting it as this, purely evil thing.
No, not at all. It definitely acknowledges the significant positives.
Yeah.
I mean, it's invaluable for professional networking for many people.
True.
You can absolutely learn things through curated content, finding experts.
Yeah, finding communities.
For businesses, it's a vital tool for marketing, reaching customers, and of course, connecting with friends and family, especially those far away. That's huge.
Definitely. Can't argue with that. But then there's the flip side, that other edge of the sword. The impacts the article focuses on are, well, pretty significant.
They really are.
Yeah.
It highlights the negative effects on our attention spans and our ability to do what's called deep work.
Deep work, meaning?
That's the kind of focused, uninterrupted concentration you need for, complex problem solving, writing something substantial, creative tasks, the hard stuff.
Gotcha. And the statistic that just jumped out at me, the average user apparently opens these apps over 80 times a day.
80 times.
80! It's staggering when you hear it like that.
That's the sheer scale of the habit reinforcement we're talking about. Just think about what that does to your ability to sustain focus for, say, an hour of study or a challenging project at work.
Yeah, it must chip away at it.
That constant switching, it fundamentally reduces your capacity for that extended concentration.
Which leads right to the question of why it feels so hard to just put the phone down sometimes. The article doesn't mince words here. It says, these platforms are engineered to be addictive.
Oh, absolutely. They're built with behavioral psychology baked right in. Features like infinite scrolling.
So you never reach the end.
Exactly. There's no natural stopping point. Then there are variable rewards. You never know which posts will get likes or comments or when.
Like a slot machine.
Precisely the same principle as slot machines, yeah. And then push notifications, those constant, often urgent feeling pulls back into the app.
It's like a constant drip feed of those little dopamine hits we talked about earlier.
Right, and that kind of instant, unpredictable stimulation makes anything that requires, delayed gratification.
Like actually finishing that tough report.
Exactly. Makes that feel much less appealing in the moment compared to the quick hit from the phone.
So your brain gets trained to prefer the easy, instant thing.
Over sustained effort, yes.
Okay, and this ties into the whole idea of multitasking. We often think we're good at juggling work emails and checking our feeds.
Yeah, the myth of multitasking.
But the article really busts that myth, doesn't it?
Completely. It stresses it's not multitasking, it's rapid task switching. And the data it presents is pretty stark.
How bad is it?
Trying to juggle cognitively demanding tasks, like work and social media scrolling, can slash your productivity by as much as 40%.
40%.
Yeah.
That's huge. It really feels like your brain is paying this mental tax every single time you bounce between your spreadsheet and checking Instagram.
You're basically draining your cognitive resources with each switch. It makes you slower, you're more likely to make errors, and you actually retain less of the information you're trying to process.
Wow. Okay, so let's track where these impacts actually show up. The article looks at different parts of life. The workday, for instance.
The workday is a big one, especially now with so many people working remotely, right? Those boundaries between work time and personal time can get really blurry.
Definitely. That little urge for a quick break on social media.
Yeah, it can easily spiral into a significant chunk of lost focus time without you even realizing it.
And the article mentions some companies using monitoring tools, but suggests that's maybe not the real solution.
Right. It argues that sort of surveillance doesn't really fix the core issue. Often, the underlying problem is just digital overwhelm.
Too much coming at you from all directions.
Exactly. People are bombarded with emails, messages, notifications. Social media is just one part of that larger feeling of being constantly on.
And it's not just our work that suffers. The connection between social media use, sleep, and just feeling mentally drained, that's a major point, too.
Oh yeah, that late night scrolling habit, it has real biological effects.
Like the blue light.
Exactly. The blue light from the screen suppresses melatonin. That's the hormone that signals to your body it's time to sleep.
So it pushes your bedtime later?
Pushes bedtime later, and it can significantly reduce the amount of REM sleep you get. And REM sleep is crucial for memory consolidation and cognitive function.
Which leads to that horrible next day feeling. Brain fog, maybe more irritable.
Precisely. And the article warns that over time, that chronic lack of good restorative sleep can contribute to bigger issues like burnout, persistent fatigue, even potentially mood disorders like depression.
So rest isn't a luxury.
It's fundamental, absolutely essential if you want to have the mental energy you need to focus during the day.
The article also specifically calls out students, saying they might be particularly vulnerable.
Yes, it cites research linking heavy social media use in students to, lower academic performance.
Lower GPAs.
Lower GPAs, yeah, more procrastination, and even difficulty retaining the information they're supposed to be learning.
Makes sense. If you haven't developed strong self-control habits yet.
Right. These platforms can easily just gobble up the time and the mental bandwidth that should be going towards studying or coursework.
And often the initial hook, the thing that pulls you in, is just a notification.
The humble ping or buzz. The article describes notifications perfectly as mini disruptions.
That's a good way to put it.
They constantly pull your attention away, and they train your brain for that immediate reactive response. Get this, there's even research showing that silent notifications.
Silent ones, like just the badge on the app icon.
Yeah, just seeing that little red circle with a number in it, even if your phone didn't make a sound, can reduce your working memory capacity.
Wait, really? Just seeing an unread notification badge is taking up brain space? That's wild.
The research suggests so, because part of you is aware of it, wondering what it is. So the article suggests some pretty practical best practices here.
Like what?
Things like being really aggressive about pruning, which apps are even allowed to send you notifications. Use Do Not Disturb modes liberally.
Yeah, I should use that more.
And consciously decide to check apps at specific planned times rather than just reacting instantly every time something pops up. Batching, basically.
Okay. The article also draws a strong line between social media use and mental health struggles, specifically anxiety.
It really highlights how the constant exposure to these, carefully curated, often idealized versions of other people's lives fosters what it calls comparison culture.
Right. Comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel.
Exactly. And that can feed into feelings of imposter syndrome, feeling like you're not good enough. That dreaded FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Oh, FOMO is real.
And this constant pressure towards perfectionism, which is exhausting.
And all of those things, the comparing, the FOMO, the perfectionism, they're all emotionally and mentally taxing, right?
Totally. They drain the mental energy that you need to actually focus on your own life, your real goals, your actual relationship.
Instead of just managing anxieties triggered by what you see online.
Precisely.
So, to make these points less abstract, the article shares a couple of real-life examples, case studies.
Yeah, like Sarah, the marketing executive. She apparently saw about a 30% drop in her task completion rate.
Because she was checking her phone too much?
Because she was doing those seemingly harmless, frequent checks throughout the workday.
Yeah.
But the interesting part is, when she started using screen time blockers and consciously limited her use,
what happened?
Her productivity bounced back significantly. Within just a few weeks, she regained that loss 30%.
Wow, 30% regained. That's a powerful turnaround. And there was a student example too, Ahmed.
Right, Ahmed. He was apparently struggling academically, even failing midterms, because his evenings were getting consumed by these long social media and video binges.
Yeah, easy rabbit hole to fall down.
Totally. So he decided to take a break, a 2-month break, actually deleted the main distracting apps, and his GPA improved by a solid 1.2 points.
1.2 points. These aren't small, trivial changes we're talking about.
No, they really illustrate the tangible impact these habits can have.
Yeah.
But look, it's not all doom and gloom. The article offers practical strategies too.
Okay, good. What kind of things can you do?
It provides a whole toolkit of what it calls productivity hacks. Things like setting clear timer-based limits for how long you allow yourself on certain apps each day.
Using timers.
Employing structured work methods, like the Pomodoro technique, where you focus intensely for, say, 25 minutes, then take a short break.
Yeah, I've heard of that, Pomodoro.
And a really key one seems to be deliberately scheduling your scroll time.
Like planning it in.
Yeah, planning it for after you've completed your important work or study tasks for the day. Treat it like a reward, maybe, rather than an escape hatch from doing the hard stuff.
That makes sense. Don't start with the distraction.
Exactly. Other tips are simpler but potentially effective too, like turning your phone screen to grayscale.
Black and white, why?
It apparently makes the apps look less visually appealing, less stimulating, takes away some of that colorful allure.
Huh, interesting.
And creating physical no-phone zones in your home, like strictly no phones at the dinner table, or maybe banishing them from the bedroom entirely.
To signal that those spaces are for different things, like connecting or resting.
Right, creating those boundaries.
And you mentioned there are even tools, like apps, designed specifically to help enforce these kinds of boundaries.
Yeah, the article mentions several helpful ones. There's Forest, which is kind of gamified. You grow a virtual tree by staying focused, but if you leave the app, your tree dies.
Oh, I like that. Accountability.
Then there's Freedom, which blocks distracting websites and apps across all your devices.
Yeah.
Rescue Time helps you track where your digital time is actually going, which can be eye-opening.
Yeah, I bet.
And something called Cold Turkey, which is described as a pretty hardcore blocker if you feel you need a really strong intervention.
So tools exist if you need that extra support.
They're presented as ways you can consciously take back control over your attention rather than letting the apps dictate things.
And looking ahead, the article touches briefly on the sort of evolving landscape, digital well-being trends.
Yeah, it notes there's definitely a growing awareness of these issues, which is a good sign.
We see it more now.
You see device makers building in more screen time tracking and well-being features. There's a movement, albeit maybe slow, towards designing tech to be less addictive, more mindful. And even early discussions around potential regulations on certain app features or how user data is used to keep people hooked.
But the underlying message seems consistent throughout the article. The technology itself isn't necessarily the bad guy here.
That's right. As the article puts it quite clearly, the tech isn't the enemy. Its misuse is the problem. The future isn't about everyone disconnecting entirely.
Probably unrealistic anyway.
Probably. It's more about becoming conscious, intentional users,
Yeah.
using these powerful tools deliberately.
Okay, so bringing it all together then. the core message from this deep dive seems pretty straightforward, actually. Social media isn't inherently bad.
No.
But its impact on your life, on your focus, your productivity, it depends heavily on how you choose to engage with it.
Exactly. And by understanding the science, the psychology, the engineering behind why it's so captivating, that empowers you to set better boundaries for yourself.
And the article, or maybe some related FAQs it drew from, point out signs that maybe your usage is becoming problematic.
Yeah, things to watch out for in yourself, like compulsive checking, feeling that irresistible urge, finding it genuinely hard to focus on other tasks for any length of time.
Noticing mood shifts.
Noticing negative shifts in your mood when you're not online, or feeling anxious if you can't check. Or, more obviously, actively neglecting real-world responsibilities or relationships to spend time on apps.
And is there a rule of thumb, like how much is too much?
Well, a general guideline often cited is if recreational use goes over, say, 2 hours a day, especially if it's clearly interfering with your sleep or your ability to get important things done. That's a flag.
2 hours. Okay. And again, just to reiterate, the goal here isn't necessarily like digital detox forever, deleting everything.
No, not necessarily. Moving to that cabin in the woods isn't required.
Right. It's more about shifting the dynamic, isn't it?
It's about getting to a place where you are using the apps on your terms, guided by your own goals and values.
Instead of letting the app's design dictate your time and attention.
Precisely. You're in the driver's seat.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me, and maybe something for you, the listener, to chew on after this deep dive wraps up. The article really makes you consider the opportunity cost.
Ah, yes. The opportunity cost of that quick scroll.
It's more than just the 5 or 10 minutes you spend actually in the app.
It's the focus you lost leading up to it. It's the 20 minutes it might take to get back on track afterwards. It's the mental energy, the sheer cognitive space that gets pulled away.
Pulled away from other, potentially more valuable, more meaningful things in your life every single time you interrupt yourself just to check something quickly.
Yeah, that attention residue adds up over a day.
So here's the thought to leave you with. What could you potentially reclaim? In terms of creativity, maybe deeper connection with people around you, actual learning, or even just being more present in your own life.
What could you gain if you consciously chose to invest that time, that focus, that mental energy differently?
What opportunities, big or small, are you maybe trading away bit by bit for the scroll? Something to think about.